Greetings and felicitations. This is Michael Haspel, and you're listening to Quantum Froth Dispatches. In this episode, it's going to be a little bit different than what I normally do. It's going to be kind of a data dump. In the last week or so, I've received about a dozen requests for help with writing a novel. And I will always help people out, but I got a little bit tired of trying to help folks through Facebook Messenger and stuff like that. So I just figured I would record in a podcast episode that would have all the information that I would pass on to folks. And then folks could get that information and go off on their own and kind of look for stuff and everything. I am recording this extremely late or really early, depending on your point of view. So if my thoughts are a little scattered and I'm all over the place, that's the reason why. That was actually kind of a bad intro. I know I can do better. So let's crack on some educational music. What's that you say? The Rona's left you with some time on your hands? What to do? Why not produce some content instead of constantly consuming it? Why not write a novel? Come along and I'll show you how writing a book is secretly easy. Nah, for real. Strap in and lock. This is going to be a data dump. Grab a pen.
Skybird, this is Dropkick with a red dash alpha message in 2 parts. Break.
5, 4, 3. Hands on keys. Turn. Okay, so let's get a couple of things out of the way right away. First things first, I am not an authority on this stuff. I have one novel published to date. I have a short story published in an anthology, and that's pretty much it right now. I have some other projects in the works that I really am not at liberty to talk about right now. But that's my experience as an author. I am traditionally published. My novel is called Graveyard Shift, shameless plug. It was published by Tor in 2017. That's it. I know traditional publishing because I've kind of been through it, but I still don't know traditional publishing. And indie publishing is completely new to me. I am going to be publishing some stuff through indie, through Kindle Direct Publishing and through some other means. And so I'm discovering this stuff at the same time. Having said that, I have a year's worth of resources that I have accumulated and gone through and everything and parsed and filtered. And I know somewhat what is useful and what is not. So in that sense, I hope people will find this helpful. I'm going to try to keep it short because we're all pressed for time. I wasn't kidding in the intro. I would grab a pen. I'm going to try to remember to put all this stuff in the show notes. However, I don't know what I'm going to say off the top of my head. So, whether or not all that stuff finds itself in the show notes, I don't know. So if you hear me say something, rewind or whatever, jot it down. Because it is going to be kind of a data dump. I'm going to try to cram as much info as I can in here. Secondly, this is very, very important, and I heard this from multiple different agents that were telling me, you have to be Han Solo in this thing. Never tell me the odds. Because the odds of being traditionally published are grim, and the odds of being successful as an indie author are also grim. Now, as an indie author, you have a lot more control. You basically have to do everything. So what I'm going to do is try to break up this podcast into two halves. First, we're going to talk about traditional publishing, or what trad publishing, and then in the second half, we're going to talk about indie publishing. Now, I want to get this out of the way too. When I say indie publishing, I am not talking about vanity publishing. That's a whole different animal. And before there was all, the e-readers and Kindle and Amazon and all this stuff, there was a practice called vanity publishing where people would come to authors that wanted to have a book published, and they would publish your book for you. They would basically print your book and everything, and you would wind up with, 1,000 copies of your book that you're going to try to sell yourself, hand selling books and stuff. For some people it worked. For a lot of people, they just wanted to see their names on a book, which there's nothing wrong with that. But that's not what I'm focusing on in this. This is, you're going to try to write a book to be commercially successful, like get paid for it, make money, So if you do want to write a book just to see your name on it, there are a great many services, and it's actually really cheap to do. It's very, very simple to do. And I'll briefly talk about that because I've actually done some of that stuff. My friends and I have taken some fanfic that we wrote, and we wanted to put it together like it was a real book. This thing would never ever see the light of day. It violates so many IPs and copyrights that it's fanfic, and it's basically just fun and funny to us. So we went to a service like that, one of which is lulu.com, and they were able to print 3 copies for us, and that's it. And so we have those books. They're never going to go anywhere. We're not going to try to sell them. They're for our enjoyment. They have our names on them, and we made cool covers, and they look great. But that's it. So if that's all you're after, and you got to know your audience too. I mean, one of the things that we've been doing recently, my wife and I, is when we go on a vacation, instead of putting together a photo album, we'll actually put together like a coffee table book. We'll take all the digital pictures that we took on the trip, and we'll put it together and then lay it out, nice layout and everything. Penny really enjoys doing that. And then she will go and get it printed at one of these services. And there's a number of different ones all over the web. And they will return to you a coffee table book. I mean, it looks very professional and everything, and it has all your photos in it. It makes for great gifts. It works very, very well. The third thing I want to get out of the way is reach out for help. Right now, we just have just a bevy or a plethora. If you like, I watched the Three Amigos the other day, so I just have that plethora stuck in my head. Jefe, what is a plethora? But anyway, we have just a cornucopia of delights as far as resources to reach out and start learning stuff. Having said that, I can't recommend going to a writers' conference enough. But I'm recording this during the Rona. There are no writers' conferences, right and wrong. These conferences are actually still going on. They're going on virtually. At the time of this recording, there's one coming up in September called, I think it's called the Colorado Writers Workshop. And that's going to be like September 12th. So go and check it out. They're not free. They do cost some money. But you can go and check it out and everything, and they're done by Zoom. They even have pitches. They have a ton of agents and everything, and that is a great segue into the traditional publishing aspect of this, right? So if you're going to be if you want to traditionally publish, and that's like you want to see your book in Barnes & Noble someday, if they're still around after this whole Rona thing, right? If there are even physical bookstores. But you want to go into a physical bookstore and pick up your book, and it's from, one of the big 5, right? There's like, when you hear folks talk, they'll say they're these big 5 publishing, and it's like Macmillan and then Penguin Random House, and these names. They're the big publishing companies. Well, there's really like 5 left. And after this Rona thing, who knows, right? Everything's up in the air. You can also, there's some small presses that will also do this. one of the ones, I don't even know if this is considered a small press, is like Angry Robot. They produce some great content. That's another caveat I need to talk about. This is going to be primarily from the point of view of genre fiction concerning science fiction, fantasy, and horror. I don't know romance. I apologize, right? But I will name some resources that you can find all that stuff. And I'm not going to go in depth on this is just applicable to science fiction, or if you're not writing fantasy, don't pay attention to this. I'm not going to distribute content like that. This is general content for everybody, but keep in mind, I'm a fantasy writer in sci-fi and horror, so that's kind of what I know. And again, I don't know a whole lot. So take everything I say with a grain of salt, and there's probably a good chance I'm going to give you some information that is either outdated or not accurate. So double check everything. You should be doing that anyway. But in any case, traditional publishing, you're talking about big five and small press, right? If you're going to go with the big five, you're probably going to need an agent. Long gone are the days where these big five publishers or even small presses take unsolicited manuscripts. What that means is they will not take a manuscript that is not represented. Now, does that mean that you have to have representation before you can even talk to an editor? No. It sounds contradictory, but that's actually how I got published. I actually met the editor first and received an offer for my novel first, and then got an agent, which kind of made things really a little bit easier because I already had a deal, but it also kind of tied my agent's hands because I already had a deal. So it kind of limited what she was able to do. So if you're going to go with an agent, you're going to need to know how to write a query letter, which nowadays it's almost certainly in email form. But you're going to have to do your research. You need to know, the agent's name and who they are. And it helps if you have a contact or something. And I'm not going to go into how to write query letters. That might be a future QFD that would be really short. But honestly, there's better resources than me talking here at, whatever time it is, at like 4 a.m, trying to tell you how to write a query letter. So one of the easy ones is a magazine called Writer's Digest. Now, you don't have to subscribe to the magazine to see a bunch of their resources, right? So they have some really excellent articles on how to write a query letter. And there are forums out there where you can post up a query letter and they will give you feedback on it. And I would highly recommend that, because my agent probably, if I said she received 25,000 queries a year, I'm probably underestimating. You know what I mean? They receive a lot of queries. Well, how can they possibly sort through 25,000 queries? Well, the secret is about half of them are garbage. So that's 13,000 gone, like immediately, because the people don't know what they're doing. They have stuff in the wrong format. They have a bunch of alarms that set off when they're trying to go through all these emails that this person doesn't know what they're doing. They're unprofessional. They haven't done their research. They don't know what they're talking about. So by all means, do that. Know what you're talking about. Do your research. Know how to write a query letter. Know how to put your things in the correct format, because otherwise it's round filed. Second thing, if you're going to be talking with agents, you need to know how to pitch. And that's whether or not you're writing a query letter, because one of the paragraphs in your query letter had better be a pitch for your story idea or for your book, or it's not going to go anywhere. If you're going to one of these conferences, in person or virtual, right, they often have pitch sessions where you can pitch an agent. I find this extremely useful. Even if I'm not hunting for an agent, it's basically somebody is going to sit there, a professional is going to sit there and listen to your idea and express interest in it or not? Does it have legs? Does it have potential? Can it move? Has it been done to death? Is it, are you trying to push an idea that is saturated right now in the market? It could be a great idea, right? Oh, great idea. 400 other people are writing the same book right now. So it pays to know that, maybe even before you start writing your book. As a quick aside, just to give you an idea how the traditional publishing can be kind of rough, especially right now with the Rona going on. There was an article in The Guardian earlier today where they were talking about on September 3rd, there are 600 books coming out that day. Now think about that. If you're a bookstore, are you going to go buy 600 new books? No. So it's the market got saturated because everybody started pushing their releases. They thought the Rona would be over by now. They started pushing their releases towards the end of the year, right? So now September 3rd, you have 600 books coming out in one day. And I'm assuming that is only traditionally published books because they were talking about bookstores and acquisitions. So that does not include indie publishing. I don't even know the stats on how many books get published a day on Amazon. I have no idea. That's one of the things I need to find out. But those are some real numbers for you to think of. But back to pitching, right? So you have to be able to pitch your story. You have to be able to pitch it succinctly. There are a ton of resources on how to put together a pitch. Some people will tell you it's got to be 25 words or less, or look up something called like the elevator pitch. There's usually like one sentence that if you were stuck, the scenario is like you're in a hotel, you get onto an elevator, and Steven Spielberg and James Cameron are sharing the elevator, and they stop talking about what they're working on. They go, "Hey, are you a writer?" "Yeah." "Well, what are you working on?" Well, you don't know what floor Steven Spielberg and James Cameron are getting off of, right? So you have 30 seconds to tell them what you are working on and try to get them interested into making it. That's an elevator pitch. That's where that term comes from. Now, when you're pitching to an agent, that might or might not be the best tactic to use, because when you're pitching to an agent, you usually have more than 30 seconds and they're there waiting to hear your idea. So I have found a lot of utility, and I'm going to kind of break from my data dump here to talk about a 3 log line pitch formula that Linda Rohrbaugh introduced me to. I guess it was her idea. I heard about it at Pikes Peak Writers Conference, right? And it is a little difficult to find information about this. That's why I'm going to talk about it here now. So very briefly, instead of just having one sentence, you're going to have 3 sentences. And they follow a very specific formula. And the idea is that you're trying to create a dialogue. You're trying to initiate a conversation about your idea. It's not just, hey, I have 30 seconds, let me just bark it out and with rote recitation, and then stand there waiting for you to react to it, because that's what will happen. So this is more to initiate a conversation, and it demonstrates that you understand story structure and things like character arcs, right? So the first log line is going to follow kind of a formula, and these things do not have to be in order. They can be in a loose order. So that first log line is going to include these components: hero, flaw, a life-changing event, the opponent, ally, and battle or conflict. That's going to be your first sentence. Your second sentence is going to be the character who arcs or changes and what the arc or change is. And then the third log line is going to be the theme of your story. And it can be a cliche. It'll be something kind of trite. So to demo this, I'm going to read you the 3 log line pitch I have for Graveyard Shift. So the first log line, remember, is hero, flaw, life-changing event, the opponent, ally, battle, and conflict. And I'm going to give you a caveat right away that I might not cover all those. So here's the first log line for Graveyard Shift. When the artificial blood vampires depend on is poisoned, a disillusioned immortal pharaoh must battle an ancient vampire conspiracy with the help of some questionable allies. That's your first log line. If you note, that's also an elevator pitch, because memory's a commodity. So why memorize different versions of things? So the second log line, is the character who arcs or changes, and the arc or change is. And the third log line is the theme. Now, the reason I went with both is because I combined them in my 3 log line pitch. So here's my second and third sentence. He rediscovers his humanity when he concludes that evil will triumph when good people do nothing. Right? Paraphrasing Edmund Burke, everyone's heard that phrase. It rings true. And that's the 3 log line pitch. So practice pitching. The easiest, best way to practice pitching is not just to practice your own stuff. Practice other pitching. Practice pitching movies that you've seen, right? Take Jurassic Park or something, or Star Wars, and pitch it, right? As if it were your own idea. And if you're running out of idea, I cannot recommend this game enough. It's called Pitch Storm. You can find it it's a tabletop game. You can find it at your local game store. You can find it, of course, online, right? It is a little bit like Cards Against Humanity, only you're pitching stories and you're going to be receiving notes. Sometimes the notes are absurd. The thing is you're training your brain to think on your feet and to be able to change your pitch when you see somebody's attention maybe lagging, right? Or maybe they've heard this idea a dozen times before. You need to be able to switch in the middle of your pitch. And the easiest way to do that is to practice. So get Pitch Storm. All right. So then there are all these resources on how to get an agent, all this stuff out there. Writer's Digest has a lot of great stuff out there. Find literary agencies that represent the kind of genre that you want and read they will have guidelines on what they're looking for. There's also a Twitter, and my brain is starting to flake out right now. There is like a Twitter hashtag called manuscript wish list, I think is what it's called. Look for that. These are agents and editors literally going on Twitter and saying, I want a story about this. So if no one's writing those stories, write that story, right? Give them what they ask for. So go check all that stuff out. And I realize I'm going a little bit long on trad publishing, so I'm going to switch to indie publishing. Indie publishing, as I've said, is a mystery to me. Primarily, there's Kindle direct publishing. That is, if you're going to go Kindle only, there's a bunch of different ways to do it. Print on demand. There are ways of getting from, say, like Lulu, 1,000 copies of your book and trying to hand sell these things and everything like that. But with a lot of the conferences and conventions that are not going right now, I would not advise that as a way to do things. You're going to wind up with a lot of inventory on your hands until this whole coronavirus thing is over and stuff starts opening back up, which who knows, right? Who knows when that'll be. So I would not advise that, but it's up to you. The beauty part about indie publishing is that it's up to you. You don't like that cover? Don't use it. You don't like that title? Don't use it. But you're responsible for everything, right? So with traditional publishing, this was actually kind of cool. Once I got in, right? Once they said, hey, we want to publish your book, and I signed that contract, a bunch of stuff was out of my hands. Now, some of it I had no control over, right? But some of it was frankly great. I didn't have to worry about a developmental editor. There are different types of editors, right? A developmental editor is the person who's going to give you story notes. Like, say, for instance, hey, you shouldn't probably wait until the end of your book to reveal that this guy is a mummy. Maybe tell readers that on page 1. That's the kind of thing a developmental editor would tell you, right? Then you're going to have a copy editor or a line editor, and they're going to go through and you're missing a comma here and it has an apostrophe in it or stuff like that, right? They're going to help you. You get a publicist, you get a cover designer, you get a person that lays out the whole book for you. You get people who go travel to bookstores. That's their job, to get bookstores to buy your book. If you're indie publishing, you get the privilege of doing all those jobs, right? And you have to source all that stuff. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to. But the days of being able to publish a book and have an amateurish looking cover and sketchy editing because you're like, oh, I let one of my writing partners like read the book and they found a couple mistakes and that's the editing, right? That's not going to fly. So one of the resources I want to point you to is a place called Reedsy, and it is I think it's www.reedsy.com, and there are editors on there, right? They will offer you editing. There are cover designers. There are, book layout people. There are folks that will take your Word file and convert it to an ebook for you. All kinds of stuff like that, right? You can find there. Keep in mind, all that costs money. You can also go to Fiverr, look for people that'll offer services there for cover designers. DeviantArt, there are people that will produce covers, but all this costs money. So you have to sink in your own money if you're into indie publishing up front, right? And hope to recoup it. Hopefully you do recoup it. I hope you recoup it. But just keep in mind that publishing your own book could cost you a couple grand, depending on, what kind of services you get. And that was the nice thing about traditional publishing, is it didn't cost me a dime. They paid me. But, that's it comes with its own set of challenges. Let me just put it that way. Now, with Kindle Direct Publishing, I have actually published a thing on Kindle as an experiment, right? And I've since pulled it, but it was a test, and I was able to do it in about a half an hour, like from assembling this document together, putting it together, and putting it on Kindle Publishing. And I didn't actually hit publish, but that's all I had left to do was hit publish. And it took me about a half an hour. So you can go from complete to publication remarkably quickly. However, I don't know all the ins and outs and everything. What I would recommend is YouTube is just incredible on the amount of resources that they have. And one of the guys I know is James Hunter, and he and his wife run Shadow Alley Press, and they do a lot of lit RPG and fantasy and stuff like that. He is a very successful indie author, and they track down like the Amazon algorithms. They know all this stuff, right? So unfortunately, this was done on such short notice, I couldn't really reach out to James to get a whole lot of info. But guess what I found on YouTube? I found a Kindle Direct Publishing University at Home on YouTube. And they have about, 20, 25 videos where they're interviewing independent authors on what to do with Kindle Direct Publishing to be successful. And go figure, the very first one I found was an interview with James Hunter. So go peep that out. And if you want to do Kindle Direct Publishing, because I guarantee you he's got the goods and the info. And if you reach out, he'll probably, I don't want to speak for him, but he'll probably answer you unless he's super busy. And this is a guy who, he is cranking out books. That's the other thing with the indie publishing. You might not want to write a longer book. You might want to break it up and serialize it, right? Because your release windows and your release methods to your readers are going to be different than your distribution with like a physical hardcover book in a bookstore from traditional publishing. If you're publishing stuff to a Kindle and your readers know that, hey, every month you're going to come out with the next part of the story, that's how you build a great audience and everything like that. Whereas like with a bookstore and traditional publishing, that would be prohibitive to do. It would be very hard to do. But with indie publishing, you can get away with that. You're on your own schedule. So, and James, I think he puts out a new book, like if it's not every month, it's every other month. Like this guy's very prolific. So that's one thing to check out. Check out meetup.com for like writers groups and stuff, because I can't emphasize this enough. I don't know who you are, but your writing's not that good. So you need to get a critique group and read other people's stuff. Have other people read your stuff. They're going to find things that you take for granted because all the readers you hang out with happen to know the same pop culture references or play the same games. So you take something for granted, and you'll have somebody from a different genre or from a different group go, hey, wait a minute, how come this person was able to cast this spell? That doesn't make any sense. And without an external critique group, you're never going to get that kind of feedback. So also beta readers, enough said about all that stuff. But please do not just write your book, finish it, type the end, go to direct Kindle publishing and publish it. Do not do that. Because you might poison the well. Somebody might see that, go, hey, this premise is awesome. And they start reading it, and, you've got a bunch of subpar writing in the first 3 pages. They're just going to put it down, and then they may never give you another chance again. They may go, oh, that's the guy or gal who wrote that terrible book that I read. Right? So do not do that. Keep in mind also, the first draft of the book is the worst the book's ever going to be, with any luck. I mean, you can make it worse, but it's you actually have to be trying at it. Let me see here. I've got a couple of notes on some other stuff. Know what the standard manuscript format is if you're going to publish to traditional publishing or send it to an agent. If it's not formatted correctly, it's going to get round filed. I think I might have already said that, but in any case, yeah, I think I'm getting into resources now. So there's a ton of stuff. If you want to know how to write fiction, right? There's Masterclass has a course by Neil Gaiman, and they have all these courses on writing. There's the great courses. If you have audible.com, the great courses are there. You can use a credit to get one of your great courses and everything. They have writing courses on there. But for my money, YouTube's free, and YouTube has a lot of writing courses and a lot of story analysis. Now, I'm kind of going to be poking at myself here, right? But don't listen to just some random person that's just talking about story, right? You have no idea what they know or what they don't know, what their credentials are. Are they a successful author? Are they not? Are they just, a pop culture critic, right? So a very successful author is Brandon Sanderson. So go on to YouTube and type in Brandon Sanderson, and it is like the fantasy writing course, and it is from BYU. It is a course that they offer at BYU. Most of the course is actually on YouTube for free. And he's got guest instructors, Mary Robinette Cole's on there. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And then, and it's a phenomenal course. I've watched it like 2 or 3 times, and I'm picking up new stuff every single time I watch it. Having said that, I've already kind of plugged them. Check out a podcast called Writing Excuses. Writing Excuses is hosted by Mary Robinette Cole, Dan Wells, Howard Taylor, and Brandon Sanderson. And these are little 15-minute long podcast episodes where they cover a very specific topic. And they have guests on there too and everything. So you can kind of figure out what other people are doing. And they cover this stuff very, very quickly in 15 minutes. And you definitely want to listen to that. Another great podcast, Lively Grind Cafe, with my friend L.S. Hawker. Check that out. You know, they often talk about the state of the industry, how things are going. If you want to know what agents are thinking, KT Literary Podcast. Now, full disclosure, that's the agency I'm with. That's who represents me. But you get to talk, you get to hear what professionals are saying, right? Because you need to know that, hey, if a certain genre is dying or dead and they're having trouble selling that, maybe don't write that book in that genre, right? You kind of need to know this stuff. Now, granted, if you're already 3/4 through your book, finish your book, right? It's like, because genres are cyclical, they come around. So you might not be able to sell it like now, but maybe 5-10 years from now, who knows, right? Just stick it in a trunk, wait. Let's see. Oh, My Imaginary Friends by Leslie Penelope. That's a really good podcast, right? She is a very successful fantasy author. You want to listen to that. And then you want to get, as far as books go, if I was on a desert island and I could only bring one book about writing, right? I would buy a book called Stealing Hollywood by Alexandra Sokoloff. Now, it is only on Amazon. It is about $16 if you get the print-on-demand version, and it's $4 on the Kindle version, or if you want to read it on a tablet, right? I would recommend buying the physical book because you're going to dog-ear stuff, you're going to, put placeholders in and everything. The reason I recommend this book is because she references about 25 other books and distills ideas that are critical, that these other books like The Writer's Journey, The Heroes with a Thousand Faces, Save the Cat, all these other books that go into depth, she kind of grabs like the kernel of these ideas, puts her own spin on it, and then puts it in this book. So if you want to, if you read something in Alexandra's book that suddenly sets off a light bulb, you can go and find the actual other book that oh, well, this sounds really cool. And she said, this is an idea from Save the Cat. Let me go get Save the Cat. And I can delve into that much deeper. But if you're just trying to get started like right now and get going like right now, I would recommend that as the only book you need to buy. And having said that, you don't even need to buy a book. Go to the Creative Pen with 2 N's. So it's thecreativepen.com. It is a website run by Joanna Penn. That's why I'm not going to waste a lot of time talking about all this stuff. If you go to thecreativepen.com, she has probably more content than you can get through in a month for free. And it talks about query letters and how to get an agent, how to self-publish, and how to make your own audiobook, and how to do podcasts, and how to do everything is on there. She's got audio lessons. She's got video lessons. She has blog articles. She's got all kinds of resources. Go there. In fact, when you're done listening to this, or as you're listening to this, go to thecreativepen.com and it will help you. I guarantee it. So I would go with that, right? The last thing I kind of want to touch on is software. Everybody kind of has Word or Google Docs or something like that that you can use to write a book. You certainly can write a book that way. I actually wrote Graveyard Shift using Word. I would not recommend doing that again. I have friends of mine that write their books on Google Docs, and they're fine, right? And famously, like George R. R. Martin writes all of his stuff on like some ancient 80s, I don't know if it's a Tandy but it's some ancient word processor, runs on 5 1/4 inch floppies or something insane. So he doesn't have to worry about viruses because honestly, like this computer is so antiquated that no one, can't even go to the internet. So, but I would recommend two different pieces of software. Don't get both, get one or the other. The first one is called Scrivener, right? And Scrivener is a love-hate thing. It has a steep learning curve. I'm deep into Scrivener, so it's very, very hard for me to break out of it, but I have all these templates built in. I have references, all kinds of stuff, so I can just open, when I go to write a new short story, a novella, or a novel, I open up that template in Scrivener, and I have all the resources I need to help me develop characters, to help me develop settings, plots. Everything is right there. The other software I just recently discovered, and I've played around with it, is called Papyrus Author. Also really, really good, very, very solid. Both of these platforms offer you an easy way to convert your work from what you're working on to an ebook format, right? What you're going to want to do. There are other programs out there to help you with plot, like Plotter, to help you format your ebook, like Vellum. I have never used Vellum. I know what it is, but I haven't used it. There are other resources out there that will help you figure it out. The Scrivener is a one-time fee of about $50, if I remember correctly, and Papyrus Author is they have a free version you can use indefinitely, but it has like some of its features are curtailed, and it is a $15 a month subscription model. So if you want to use all the features, and frankly, some of the features are really, really cool. They have this timeline feature. They have a pin board that is really neat. They have advanced editing that is amazing, which I wind up using an extra piece of software to do that because Scrivener doesn't offer that. So let me put it this way. If I wasn't already invested and deep and used to Scrivener, I would probably jump all over this Papyrus Author. But when I look at it, I go, I'm so used to Scrivener, I'm locked in. So what I'll have to do is just find a new project and start fresh and use Papyrus Author to develop it and see which one I like better, and then I'll switch over. If I switch over. But we'll see. I think that is about it. A real quick note, a couple people asked me about self-publishing comic books. I'm sorry, but I cannot help you with that. I just don't know enough. I do know that Amazon has some kind of comic book publishing service that they offer. Right now, I don't want to discourage people because it seems like independent comics are going to be the wave of the future. DC just had I think they named it a bloodbath. They just laid off like, I don't know how much, easily a third of their staff, right? DC Comics. Marvel is not doing much better. Diamond Comics, they're the distributors. They've had, the coronavirus has hit them really hard. Comic book stores are really hurting. So I don't, to the folks that ask me about comic books, I'm sorry, I just don't know enough, but it seems like that's going to be even more of an uphill battle. Granted, if you have good content, it'll always rise to the top, right? So I don't want to discourage people, but I just don't know enough about it. And I'll leave you with just please go and visit thecreativepen.com, and good luck with your writing. And if you need, more advice than this and everything, feel free to reach out to me on Facebook or on Twitter. I'm at Michael Haspel on both platforms. And I will help you if I can, or at least point you in a way that I think might help you. So, yeah, that's really all I've got for now. Mike, out. You have been listening to Quantum Froth Dispatches by Michael Haspel. Music and other cues are brought to you by The Fat Rat. The song you are hearing is Monody, featuring Laura Brehm. Thank you for listening, and we now return you to your mundane reality.